Welcome to this week's episode of Courageous Leaders Changing the World. Super excited for this week's guest, Sally Prosser. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So for the listeners who don't know who you are you and what do you do?
Well, as of recently, I am an author, which is a new title to add, which is exciting. Author, voice and speaking coach, communicator, expresser, lover of all things voice, and living in Brisbane and enjoying my life as a traveller. And as of later this year, I'm also adding walker to the list. We're walking the Camino de Santiago, which is a 33-day walk across the north of Spain.
Yeah.
So trading in the microphone for the walking poles a lot this year.
Yeah, wow. I've had a client that's done that and it's pretty full on to be able to go, so many days walking such long days as well. So it takes a lot out of you.
Yes, I will report back post-event.
What's been your relationship with the voice then? What had you get into what you do?
Yeah, so often with people who are voice and public speaking coaches, you hear the story of, I really struggled, didn't have my voice, got through it, and now I teach it. I was a little bit different. I was born microphone first. So as my mum says, I've always enjoyed speaking. And when I was about 8, I said, all I want for Christmas is a red microphone on a stand. And then I came out and I got it. And the first thing I did was give a thank you speech to Santa for bringing me the microphone. And so Mum put me into speech and drama, and I did debating and public speaking and all of that through school, and then was in radio as my first job out of after uni. And what I've learned in my time is there's a big difference between speaking with confidence and speaking your truth. So for many years, and I guess from right when I was born, it's been part of me to learn how to speak, and learning the gestures and the expression and all of those surface level things absolutely is part of it. It's the skills. But I found myself in a relationship in my late 20s, early 30s, where I didn't have a voice. And I was a national TV reporter at the time, so I was reporting by day and then having no voice by night. Walking on eggshells. I think a lot of people can relate to this story. Didn't know what was true, what was not true. My family were not happy because they feared he was lying about being a doctor. Wasn't a doctor. It's all very scandalous, the story. But the reality is I began to doubt my voice completely. I didn't know what was true, what was not true. And it got to a point where my family put so much pressure on me. And in hindsight, rightly so, right? The people around us can often see things that we can't see for ourselves. And so I did what any love-blind woman in my situation would do. I told them I broke up with him and then continued to date him in secret for several more months. And so I was living kind of like this speaking double life in a way, where I was a TV reporter by day, which a lot of people would think, confident speaker using a voice, and then by night, a completely different person. And it came to a head one night when I found myself lying on the bed. He chased me down the hallway with the 4 points of an upturned chair and tossed me onto the bed. And in that moment, if you had have asked me before it happened, would have I screamed? I would have been like, hell yes, I would have, Expressor since birth. I didn't say anything. I didn't make a sound. I was just lying there. And it was the whole night before something shifted in me. And I physically felt it in my body rise up through my voice. And I just made this sound. And in that moment, that was when I truly realised the difference between speaking with confidence and speaking your truth. And that was really the moment that I realised I wanted to turn my life to doing this kind of work and helping people, sure, speak with confidence and get rid of the nerves and all of those things that are so important to express yourself in your life, but more so than that, and see your voice as part of who you are, the organ of your soul, and the importance of expressing your truth in your life, in your relationships, which goes so much deeper than a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so many people have that ability to be able to, speak into a microphone, but it doesn't mean that they're actually heard when they're communicating what is actually coming through them, because they're almost in presenter mode rather than speaking. They're just relaying facts rather than actually, holding a room.
Cody, I can completely relate. Like right now, I'm like, okay, camera, Sally Prosser, back into my reporter voice. It's so true that you say that. And it was interesting in my life with the role that I was playing, and so many people do this with their voices. They say what they think they should say in the way that they think they should say it to sound good, or whatever that is, or to say the right thing, rather than just finding that connection between the voice in their belly, I suppose, or the voice deep inside them and the physical voice coming out, the connection between the inner voice and the outer voice, and realising the voice is that channel. And as a coach, most of my work is around working out what are those blockages in the way. Like I'm not giving people a good voice. I work with reporters and people say, Sal, why do you get them to put on that stupid voice? Like, and I'm like, no, a bit more to it than that. And I say, no, I'm not here to give you a voice or to fix your voice. I'm just here to help you come back to your own voice, which has always been there.
Yeah, I love that. What do you do with people when they've recognized that they've fallen into the trap of sounding good and trying to say the right things? They want to sound good and they want to say the right things.
What do I
do with them when they've recognized that that's what they're doing?
Oh, you know, a lot of the role is getting to that point where we can recognize it. And in some cases, once you do recognize it, you can let that go. But it's working through those inner voices, the inner perfectionist, the inner critic, the inner I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, all of those stories. I call it the speaking story. If your speaking story is, oh, you have to get everything right. If you stumble, you're a bad person. If you take a pause too long, then that means that they'll think that you don't know what you're speaking about. And then by the end of it, you'll lose your job, lose your house, and you'll be on the street eating cat food out of a tin. I call that the catastrophizing spiral. And so it's about rewriting that speaking story so that your inner dialogue matches your outer voice. And what I would say is so many of those blocks that we get and those voices inside and those experiences we hang on to are not truly our own inner voice. They're ones that have been planted there and we've chosen to hang on to them because our true inner voice is never going to be unkind to us.
Yeah, definitely. They said that we take on, our parents' voices, our inner dialogue becomes what our parents and how they interacted in our childhood, especially between, 3 to 7 years of age, because we start to understand words from there, that we actually start to take on their dialogue and how our inner dialogue, how our parents talk to each other and themselves is a representation of that in many instances. And it plays out where we start to take on a lot of our dialogue, especially with whoever the breadwinner is in the household as well, because we start to have that inner dialogue, especially with our work, and we start to model that because we're like, all right, this is what creates money. We're going to follow through with this. And that's what worked for my parent in this instance, whoever the breadwinner was. And I'm going to follow through with that. We take that on, even if it's very, very unresourceful. So
interesting. Do you find yourself saying anything that your parents said or catching yourself
mostly in parenting? It's like, oh, I'm never going to do that as a parent. And then you're like, oh.
Yeah, that's why I asked. It's such a common story where people will be like, oh my goodness, I just feel like that was my mum or something I said I would never say. And in my book, Voiceprint, I talk about, so the voiceprint being the invisible mark you leave every time you speak, and the focus on not what's happening during the speaking, but what is the mark left? How are you remembered after you've gone? And there's a family voiceprint, which is what is the mark of the way our family speaks and the voices in the household. Were we brought up with, I'm just thinking of my dad now, he would always say, it's not the dollar you have, it's what you do with the dollar you have. And you were talking about the breadwinner, and I'm like, yeah, I do take that on.
Yeah.
But then also my mum, she is a flight attendant now, which is very well suited to communication. And growing up, she would make friends with everybody. Like no matter what store we went into, it was like they were best friends. Whereas some people, so I'd say for me, my story is really communicate, express. I've worked with clients and the story's been what happens in this house stays in this house. Don't be so dramatic. Sweep it under the rug. Keep the peace. Don't talk about it, which breeds this culture of secrecy that masquerades as loyalty. And that can be really stifling with the voice as well. So a lot of the work we're doing is exploring beyond just your own voice and looking at the voices past and the voices coming as well.
What do you see some of the things that keep people stuck with that then when they're recognizing that there are certain things hampering their ability to be able to share their truth?
Well, that's usually why they find themselves in front of me, I suppose, because they're usually what happens is there's a moment where they've wanted to communicate and it hasn't worked out. So it might even be like a podcast. They might have been invited to be on one and then been like, oh no, I couldn't possibly. Gone on it, felt like they've made a dog's breakfast of it. Or they've been at work and they're finding that they're not getting heard in meetings and other people are moving up around them. The reality is you need to talk the talk, and people who talk the talk are running rings around people walking the walk every day. You know, we need to have the voice that matches the actions, and that's why the people I work with are all heart-centered, purpose-driven people, because they just need the voice to match the wonderful work they're already doing. And so a lot of the block is that inner voice, and I need to get better at this. I'm bad at this, I need to get better at this because I've always been a bad public speaker and it's holding me back. And so we really start addressing those absolute statements. It's like, well, if you've always been a bad public speaker, okay. You know, the best coach in the world can't work with the confirmation bias of the mind. Your mind is always working to prove you right. So until we start changing that to, oh, in the past, I've had some experiences with speaking that didn't go so well, that doesn't mean it has to be that way in the future. I mean, if I went by that story, my gosh, you name something that could happen badly in public speaking, and it's happened to me. Once I was on stage and I was wearing a button-up shirt, learnt this lesson very quickly, and I gestured expressively, lost the middle button and almost took someone's eye out in the front row. Like, it was bad. Another time, actually on the Gold Coast here, I was lip-syncing into my hairbrush for the start of a talk. You know, it was dance teachers, they were into it. And I flung my hairbrush across the stage as I was finishing up my lip-syncing extravaganza, hit the laptop on the little podium and cancelled the slideshow, almost sent the laptop flying. And I was like, okay, we're just going to have to start that again. So a lot of it is this idea that speaking is something to be perfected rather than your voice is a vehicle to connect.
Yeah, I love that. How much does authenticity play into this then?
Hugely. So authenticity is such a buzzword, isn't it? And I prefer to use alignment. So what is authenticity in speaking? It's alignment of the voice, the body, and the words and the intention. That's all it is. So if a speaker or if somebody doesn't seem authentic, it's usually because the words coming out of their mouth are not matching the intention you think they're trying to say. So for example, I work with lots of professionals, and if they're standing up and they say, oh, so thank you all for coming today. We really want to hear what you think. Often HR teams, for example, we really want to hear what you think. Because the voice is sitting up in the head, then the audience is not getting the feeling that they actually care at all. If you're wanting to sound like you care, it needs to be aligned with your heart space. It needs to be, we really want to hear what you have to say from this area. Calls to action need to be down from the solar plexus. It'd be great if you could send me that email. Or I call it the great motivator. You've got this, you can do this. Very different to, you've got this, you can do this. It's like, okay, I'm hearing that you think I've got this, but I'm not feeling it. So that's what authenticity is when it comes to voice. It's being able to have the voice match the movement, match the intention. And to do that, we need to be able to have access to our voice. Like our voice runs from the soles of our feet to the crown of our head. It's kind of like a whole piano board. But if you haven't been trained in how to use it, you're just going around banging on middle C, hoping to get a different emotion or a different reaction. And so the first step, we spoke about the inner voice, but as far as the craft of voice goes, it's about expanding the range and being able to use voice at different parts of the channel. Kind of like a wardrobe. Like if you imagine you only had one outfit in your wardrobe, your activewear, which would probably do well down here and, you know, working from home. And you'd make a great impression if you're going for a coffee or you're going for a walk. But would you make the best impression you could if you're going to a black tie ball or skiing? It wouldn't be right. You'd need to choose a different outfit for the purpose. And I find this is a really useful metaphor because everybody's wardrobe is theirs. I'm not asking anyone to go, I'm not going to go in your wardrobe, Cody. It's like, even though, I do like your hat. That's true. We're not looking for something outside ourselves. We're just looking for what is the expression of ourself that we can use, just like clothes. The bigger wardrobe you have, the more parts of yourself you can access to express. Same with the voice.
What are some examples of different dimensions of range then?
Okay, so I mentioned just earlier, so we've got the head. So you could say, this is my head voice. And the vibrations follow the breath. So where you're breathing, the vibrations flow. When there's tension, the breath is restricted. So if we're not breathing deep, our voice can't be here, which is often why when we're nervous, it squeezes up like a garden hose and it can go up into the pitch that only dogs and small children can hear. So relaxation's important. The vibrations follow the breath. We've got the head up here, and a lot of people use that area. It's partly because there's lots of people disconnected from their body. Also with Zoom, you're visually cut off here. Even with the phone, like if you pick it up, your voice will go higher. Hello, because you're higher in your body. Now this area, we want to use it if we're wanting our audience to think about something. So say we're opening up for brainstorming, or what do you think about that? If we were to say, so what do you think about that? It's like, doesn't seem to match. So we want to use that head voice for opening up the thinking. But then we want to be able to come down to the heart space. So breathing into the chest. And I won't take you through all the voice exercises, but if you are interested, then this is what we do in the workshops. Bring the voice down to the chest. And this is where we really want to live to sound genuine and like we care. And this should really be the default. For a lot of people, this is the default. It's the fake voice, the I don't want to be a bitch pitch, the I'm keeping everything aesthetic and together. But we want to use the heart voice because this is what sounds real. It's the voice that, sounds like we're not lying and we're happy to be here and it's more relaxed. Some people make the mistake of pushing the voice back rather than sending it down. They'll be like, if I just make my voice deeper like this, I'll sound more serious and people will take me seriously. And Elizabeth Holmes, who was the founder of Theranos, which was that company that said they could, with just a drop of blood, could test for every health ailment under the sun. So she raised so much money and it came out that she was a fraud. It was all a lie. So it's, really big story, which is great for voice because she also used a fake voice. And in an interview that she did afterwards, she said that, she'd put that on in an effort to sound more serious and have more credibility. So I say, we don't sound more credible by pushing the voice back. We do it by pushing the voice down or sending the voice down here. And then, as I mentioned, if we can go even lower to this solar plexus area, then this is where we can really have those calls to action. So with a really mundane example, if you're saying, it'd be great if you could send me that email. You're not saying send the email, you're saying it would be a good idea that you might want to consider one day if you haven't got anything else to do. But if we're talking from here and say, great, send me that email, it's aligned with the call to action part of the body where people will feel that they're more compelled to do it. So it's really interesting.
Yeah. What are some of the tips that you'd give to people to be able to utilize their voice to be able to sell more then?
Speak from the heart, definitely, because selling is all about that genuine connection, for sure. You see, some people who sell, and you see this in the States, they often get kind of into a frenzy and it gets really, really high and it's like, come on, come on, come on. And that can generate the excitement. Tony Robbins talks about getting into state, and in NLP, it can get into that state of, I want to buy. So my personal approach would be voices that are in the heart space. And when I'm buying something, I'm listening for a voice that is there. One of the biggest things I see, though, is if I'm interested in someone's service, I won't be able to hear their voice. Like I'll go to their Instagram and it's just all photos or stills. And then I don't know if they have a podcast, or on their website there's no videos. So there's actually nowhere to hear their voice. And I'd say if you are in business and you're wanting to sell, don't just look at your business visibility, look at your business audibility. Where can you be heard? Especially with AI doing so many captions and videos and photos these days, you're going to connect much more effectively if people can hear your voice. It's much less likely to be faked. I say that a bit tentatively because there are programs coming out that can fake your voice with, just a few seconds of your voice. But for the most part now, if people can hear you in conversation like this podcast now, then you're able to connect on a much deeper level because hearing someone's voice is the closest thing to touching them.
How do we develop more trust through our voice, especially in an age where people are more skeptical than ever that they could be watching something that's AI?
Trust in the voice is air in the voice. So the more you're breathing and the more air, when I say air in the voice, so voices that are kind of like crackly like this, there's not much airflow. The air's getting stuck or it's being pushed back like this. A voice of trust is a voice with air. So the air is starting deep, flowing through, hitting the vocal cords, and meant to be breathed in by the person we're speaking to. I know it sounds a bit disgusting, but we want the people we're speaking to breathe in the air that we're speaking out. And breathing in is also known as inspiration, right? To inspire. Inspiration is breathing in. And so I'd say if we want to inspire others, we must first inspire ourselves. And the more that we have that cycle of air flowing, the more people will feel it within us and be able to trust us because it links back to that authenticity.
How do you go about expanding your range differently if you're like seated versus standing? Because it's going to be like different if you're on stage versus a podcast, as an example.
Yeah, well, podcast is more casual. Like I still, when I get a microphone and a camera in front of me, I still a little bit go back into reporter mode. It's just in me. I can't help it. But of course, sitting here on a podcast is different to being on stage. We want to be able to access different parts of our voice, like the wardrobe, to be able to use the voice that's fit for purpose. This is why for leaders especially, if you need to change your communication depending who you're speaking to. So sitting down, you can still have the voice run through you. Like if you're slouching, then it's a bit harder to breathe. But if you're sitting up, you absolutely can. And with practice, if you've got that air, all right, I'll say what I was going to say originally. I didn't know if it was a bit too crass for this podcast. But you need to imagine that your buttocks are your lungs. So when you're sitting down, you're inflating your lungs, breathing into them, not out of them. That's an impression you'd rather not make. That's just making that distinction. So you're breathing really deep, and you'll find that as soon as that happens, the voice expands in its range. Because most of us are breathing far too shallow.
Are there any other breathing exercise that you recommend to people to be able to expand out their voice, especially when it comes to, I guess, being heard more?
Oh, definitely. So we're wanting to breathe deep and strengthen the diaphragm, which is where the solar plexus sits, which is also the centre of our self-worth and self-esteem, which is why it's no wonder that when we doubt ourselves, that locks up and the voice pops up as well. So going back to trust, if we're trusting ourselves, our diaphragm's relaxed and our voice lowers. So self-trust begets trust from other people. So there is one I like to call the angry librarian, which is you're breathing low and deep, and then on the exhale we say, shh, 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 like we're being an angry librarian, shh, 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 and the diaphragm's pushing back in towards the spine. So it's a great way to get the breath low and engage the power from down here every day and also before a presentation. So yes, in the book Voiceprint, full of exercises, full of things that you can do. And one of the best pieces of feedback has been people saying, Sal, I had no idea you could even write a whole book about voice. Like I just had no idea there was so much to it.
What do you say if someone has recognized that they're just not trusting their voice anymore? They've gone through experiences in life where they're not trusting their voice anymore.
I'd say if you're feeling that way, seek out someone like a voice coach or a friend or a guide, someone that can help you process that. There's so much power in being witnessed and being truly heard. A lot of people in their lives are speaking and making noise, but they're not being heard and they're definitely not being remembered. And so that can feel very, very invalidating as well, because people feel like, well, my voice doesn't matter. And one of my students shared that the most powerful moment in her life was when she went to her first women's circle and shared her story, because she felt for the first time that she was being truly witnessed and truly heard. Now, to even get to that point, we need to be honest and truly hear ourselves. So I've done a few silent retreats in my time, some easier than others. The 10-day Vipassana was quite a challenge for an auditory person like me. I found myself over the fence just tuning into the leaf blower. But going quiet to be heard is really powerful. Spend that time with yourself. Because often in those scenarios, when people are making sound but not being heard by others, it's because they're making sounds to distract themselves from truly hearing themselves. People know what they really want to do and know what they should do, and are often pushing down the voice of truth because they're like, oh, no, but, and making excuses for it. When you really open up that dialogue of what the voice inside says and then align that with the way that you speak publicly, then everything will change. It might mean a big shift in relationships. It will mean getting out of your comfort zone. But I guarantee you when you get there, it feels so good. You speak about flow here, and that's exactly what it is. Speaking in alignment is speaking in flow, and everyone loves being in the flow state.
Definitely. What would you say is like the spiritual journey of deepening your voice then?
Oh, that's a very big question, isn't it? The spiritual journey of deepening your voice. Well, the voice being the organ of the soul, the soundtrack of who you are. Doing voice work is the most powerful personal development, spiritual work that you can do. Bronnie Ware wrote a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, and she interviewed hundreds of people who were in palliative care about what their regrets were. Number one was, I wish I had lived a life true to me, not what other people expected of me, which links to voice. Am I speaking what's true of me, or am I speaking to satisfy what I think other people want? The second one was, I wish I hadn't worked so much. The third one was, I wish I had the courage to express myself. Wish I hadn't always bitten my tongue or been told silence is the best way. I would argue that it's always best to speak honestly, not at the expense of others and not at the expense of kindness, but in general, a problem shared is a problem halved, as they say. And also, as Brené Brown says, shame cannot survive the spoken word. So using the voice as the way for limiting beliefs, trapped emotions to be able to ride out. And that's why speaking, and you see it with people who speak on stage for the first time or even in a group, they feel this incredible lightness. They're like, oh, it's kind of like the travel bug. They call it the speaking bug. Like, wow, that feels so good. I didn't realise there was so much inside me. It feels like a weight off my chest. We use these expressions because through the vibrations of the voice, we actually can carry out things that need to be processed.
Yeah, I love that. What's been a time that you've had to, like the theme of the podcast is courageous leaders changing the world. What's been a time that you've had to summon more courage than any other time in your journey then?
Oh. Recently, I walked up to Oprah Winfrey on the streets of Brisbane and as a voice coach was like, hi, Oprah. All my practices went out the window. I was completely starstruck. And that was definitely a moment of courage to take action because the way that it had come about was it was the day after my big book launch and I was having a day at home and I was just really relaxed, not wanting to go out. I've shared that it was, no makeup, no bra situation. It was just like a day at home. And there was a message, Oprah could be here. And without hesitation, I grabbed the book with the note that I'd already pre-written for her. I know it sounds a bit wild, but, part of the manifestation is being prepared for things that you don't expect will happen. But here I was, grabbed Oprah's book, got in the Uber, started running towards where the Uber was, not even waiting at my designated pickup area, and just went up to Oprah. And the reason I share that as a story of courage is because I feel like a different version of myself could have easily made 1,000 reasons. You can't go meet Oprah Winfrey like this. You haven't even brushed your hair. Who are you just to walk up to her? At this point, no one has been allowed to give her anything. And, it's a long shot. I mean, by the time you get there, it probably won't even happen. And if you do, it's probably not going to happen. Like, it was just all these stories of, well, it's probably not, so why even try? And I feel like that is where courage lives. It's like the courage to say, I don't care, I'm going to go for it anyway. And I did, and it came off. Plenty of times it hasn't, but last November it definitely did.
Yeah. What do you think is the difference between someone who's memorable and remembered with their voice versus forgettable or easily dismissed?
That's the voice print, And I'm in my TEDx, I say, don't just speak to be heard, speak to be remembered. Because what's the point of being heard in the moment if you're forgotten the moment you stop? You can think of it like a fingerprint. What is that mark? There are many factors. I'd say the main one is vibrations. It's voices that have the resonance, that have the breath going through the vocal cords, that we don't just hear but we feel. You can think of these voices now. Speaking of Oprah, I went to her show that night and there's still things she said that come back to me. I mentioned things that my dad said. He's been gone for 12 years now, but there's still things that he says that I can hear so clearly. Like, eat your fish, it's good brain food. Never trust a guy who doesn't like cricket. It was all these things he used to say. So to have a voice like that, it's about having the resonance, the vibrations, using the voice as an instrument and creating that sense of echo. But I'd say for you, Cody, what would you say? Like, voices now that you're thinking, I really remember that voice, it sticks with me. What are the qualities of the voice that you think make that happen?
I think, like, when you were telling your story about Oprah before, I remembered when I did something similar with Gary Vee and flew to Sydney to see him. Basically, remember that interaction very, very vividly as well, because I flew down there, didn't have any accommodation or anything, literally just jumped on a plane, cancelled all my appointments, jumped on a plane, went down there, and
I love this story. It's so good.
Met him in a hotel lobby because he was doing all of his meetups and everything at that point, and the level of, I guess, warmth and heart in his voice and his presence in our interaction was probably the story to be able to get there was definitely part of it, but the level of connection, presence, and attention that he was giving in that moment and the level of heart that I could feel from him in that moment was what made it most memorable.
Yeah. So it was the airflow and the presence, being in the present moment. Maybe that's really what the key is. A lot of speakers are thinking in the past is what I said bad, or, those stories of who wants to listen to me, or in the future of I have somewhere to be, I have somewhere to go, or what am I going to say next? Whereas speakers who are really in the present moment, they're there to really leave their voice print. And in the book, the formula I share and what I work with my clients is the 5 elements to it. So it's the vibration, it's the openness, and it sounds like Gary Vee also had that, open chest, open jaw, open heart. The I is the intonation, which is, not going up at the end of every sentence and that kind of thing. C is the clarity of the speech, and then E is the expression. So if a voice is monotone, unless you're wanting to put people to sleep or running some kind of meditation, then that's not really what we want to hear. We will actually go into trance if we hear a monotone voice. So those 5 things really are the key to a strong voice print. But I would ask the question to, as I did to you, if you're listening, what are those voices that stick with you and why do you think that is? And then potentially model that in your own speaking.
Mm. You talked about being present as a speaker. People get stuck in the past or they get stuck in the future. How do you develop more presence as a speaker then?
Confidence and craft. So it's learning the skills and it's practicing.
Mm-hmm.
It really is practicing and keeping with the breath. A little exercise I like to use is what I call the thought drop, voice follow. So like a lot of minds, I'd say it's like a lotto ball machine. At times it can be like different things going on at all times. But when the ball drops down, you know how it goes down the rail like in the lottery? You think of that as like a train of thought. And then you wait for them all to gather and then you share that train of thought. And then you pause and then share the next one. And that visualization is a really good way to stay in that present moment rather than being like the human tennis ball machine where you're just grabbing whatever ball comes down and just like throwing it out and hoping something sticks, because the listener will feel kind of attacked or confused rather than like you're in control.
Mm. You've mentioned craft a few times now. What do you mean by that? Yeah, like a lot of people, I hear it most from people who have done more work in the media, but less for people that have just been speaking on stage. So when you say craft, what do you mean by that?
It's the skill of speaking. So stagecraft, for example. Where do you stand on the stage? Where's the past? Where's the future? What leg do you lead with? What hand do you use? What gestures look good? What clothes look good? And then also the craft that I'm most interested in is the voice. So we mentioned, how do you access different parts of the channel? How do you improve your articulation? So for example, if you're struggling with a particular sound, and this happens with accents sometimes. I worked with a client who was from Glasgow. Brilliant Scottish accent. I love the Scottish accent. But he was a safety manager and he was doing safety briefings and no one knew what he was talking about because he kept saying, you've got to have a sure. And they were like, what, mate? A what? And he was trying to say shower, like a sure, shower. So that's part of where we'd say, right, we need to open up the jaw and drop the tongue, and actually the craft of how you pronounce different words. Or kids who say wabbit instead of rabbit, right? There's a real science to be able to correct that.
Yep.
And improve the clarity of that. And then it's all the intonation of suggestion, the intonation of validation, or when do we go down? When do we go up? When do we go sideways? When do we pause? When do we go up, down, fast, slow? So there's all these different elements which shouldn't sound overwhelming. It should sound like a great opportunity. Because especially if you're out there and you're already speaking and you're already feeling like you're having an impact, imagine what could happen if you could go to the next level. It's like any sport. The world's best tennis players still have coaches. They know how to play tennis.
Mm. Yeah,
So,
definitely.
Yeah, it's an area there where learning a few of the tips and tricks can make a huge difference.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. Reminds me of a story with my son where we're living at Burleigh and I'm just like in the hallway and we're kind of toilet training. So he's on the toilet there doing his thing. And my partner's in the bedroom up here and I'm just waiting here talking to him. And he's like, he kept saying this thing. And in my mind, I'm just like, what are you saying? Because he keeps going, can we cunt? Can we cunt? And I'm like looking at my partner, not making a big deal out of it, but like looking at her going,
Can we what?
can we what? When has he ever heard this word before? And I'm like freaking out going, I have never said that word in this house. Where has he gotten this from? And eventually he goes, can we cunt? Because what we would do is we would count on the toilet to keep him there. And I finally worked it out and I'm like, I am not a bad parent as I thought. So it was one of those things that like miscommunication occurs all of the time, especially when we think that we're being heard and when we think that we're getting our point across, but it's perfectly clear to us. But often there's like that mismatch which is playing out.
That lost in translation, yeah.
Yeah. How do we go about changing our approach when we recognize that there's some lost in translation occurring? Like that someone's just giving us that look of like,
Yeah, I share a story in the book about how I was on a Saturday evening having a drink. I go up to the bar and I see a guy vaguely in my age bracket, and I'm striking up a good conversation. I said, what brings you here tonight? He said, oh, my mate's just been cremated. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And he's like, oh, it's all right. We were all expecting it. I was like, oh, well, that must make it easier. He said, oh, yeah, he's here with us. And I was thinking it was a spiritual comment. Oh, yes, I believe he's here with us as well. And then he gave me this look of like, who is this crazy lady? I've got to get these drinks back. He's just over there. And then it all started to dawn. His mate hadn't been cremated. His mate had been promoted. And I just misheard
promoted
the word. And so, yeah, we've got to be in tune with the responses. If the responses we're getting from someone really seem like they're not on the same page, then maybe we do need to adjust. And it's not just about enunciations or mispronunciations, it's also culture. So I talk about stuffing up on stage. And when I had some Americans on the call, they were like, are you talking about congestion? The nose stuffed up? And I'm like, oh, that's an Australianism. Same with I'll see you in a fortnight. 2 weeks, So it is important for us to be cognizant of the listener's experience and be able to gauge that and then just work around it as best we can. It's one of the most beautiful parts of being human, I suppose, those points of communication. And as I share in the book as well, most military operations that failed and a lot of aviation disasters and lots of really serious accidents come down to a breakdown or misunderstanding in communication. So the funny story with your son and the funny story with me at the bar, that's like best case scenario. But what if you are leading a big team or you're managing an international business or you're working with clients overseas? Potentially, if we don't get this right, it can cause a break in rapport.
Definitely. What's been an edge for you that you've been kind of stepping into in how you're relating to your voice?
How I
relate to your voice
to
and
my
how you
voice.
expand out your voice. Obviously, when like someone's teaching certain things and they get to different layers of depth to other people. So I'd love to know what's been that thing that's been part of your growth of late with your voice.
I'd say it would be media coverage at the moment and me questioning things about myself there, because I went from reporting for all those years and then I was in PR for 4 years at Urban Utilities. So I was the glamour girl for things you should and shouldn't flush. Like I was literally getting stories about sewage on the 6 o'clock news. And so I was like, okay, getting PR for myself shouldn't be that difficult. Yet I've come up against a lot of barriers that I didn't expect to be there. The story was, I used to be in the media. I used to be a journalist. Of course, it's a great topic. It's a great angle. It's a great segment, And the response hasn't been overwhelming, which has made me start to look at my own relationship with my voice and the way that I'm expressing myself and sharing my story. And I might need to look at that and see what I can do differently. I believe every edge and every rejection, I suppose, is more information that we get to use to make new decisions.
Yeah, it's one of those things that plays out with, being seen and, people's voice and the journey that we go through with it. First point of being seen in business is often just like getting on social media. And then like another kind of inflection point is then putting out ads, because then people that don't know you start to see you in a different way. And then you have all of the things about being misunderstood or rejected starts to come up. And then as soon as you start to expand that out again to be able to go out into the media, which goes more to the masses, it creates this other dynamic of things that actually comes up for us because we're journeying, how we're seen. And often that occurs, especially with a lot of people that I know that have come from the media as well, because it's not about you. It's not about the personal thing that you're creating that creates shift for people. And that's what happens with so many people that have gone from being in a job to in business. Now it's become personal. Now it's about me. Now it's not about the thing that I'm actually talking about. I've taken it so much more personal, and it becomes this thing that brings up so much more. And one of the things that I also love about it is because you start to see people create a deeper sense of relationship to themselves, because it brings more out of them based on them putting more of themselves into it. And it's this journey that people consistently go on, especially when they're growing their business, of going through that different layer of being seen on a live, on ads, PR, all of these things. And part of my mission is really to be able to bring people to have their spiritual journey and their business journey be together rather than separate. It's like we want to bring those things together so that we can actually have that personal development journey, that spiritual journey through business, by allowing all of the things to come up for us as we start to go through the different interactions and iterations that we go through of like facing off with ourselves as well. So I think that's
you're so right. You're so right. And that's what it is. In the past, when I was doing it, it was my profession, it was my skill, it was my area of work. And if somebody didn't want to run my story about the poo-powered car, then I probably wasn't.
Was that a story? An actual story?
It actually made the project. It was so successful actually, because we had one of our staff members dressed as the Stig, from Top Gear, but he had a poo emoji, so it was like the stink. Anyway, it was so successful that the BBC issued a cease and desist letter. So of course the lawyers were freaking out, but the PR team was like, yes, that was so good. But you're so right. It's different now. It's not about the skill of PR. It's about really putting myself out there to an audience beyond what feels safe. And that's why it's the edge now. Because you're right, when it's our own community and people that are tuning into our own offers, we do have that level of safety. But I'm about to, and I don't know when this will go out, but I'm about to go on a big national podcast to share a story. And I'm hoping that will be the breakthrough for me of doing it, even though, of course, part of me is afraid of what may happen once it gets out to the slings and arrows of the masses.
What's your journey with you then in terms of stepping into that more? Like the more that we stand for something, the more that people stand with us and against us. And as soon as we start to share our story on an even deeper level, and especially when we put our heart into it and all the experiences that we've had, we have, as I said, more people stand with us and more people stand against us. What's your journey of expanding into that?
The biggest one was in 2020 when I went viral on TikTok. So I went from 45 followers, just the people I knew on there, to more than 10,000 in 7 days. And it was just this really casual video about things that you should and shouldn't do. And I didn't even brush my eyelashes, as the good people of TikTok pointed out. And it went just like absolutely nuts. They talk about your phone blowing up.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know whether to, keep replying or like throw the whole thing out the window. So that was really insane. And so that was huge growth. And I got up to more than 300,000 followers. And lots of videos were going viral, and one in particular for the wrong reasons. So it was a video about pronunciation. And at the time I was working with lots of TV reporters. I still work with reporters now. And pronunciation is kind of an important thing for that job. Like when you're doing the news, for your credibility, you want to pronounce a word the correct way. Now, in general, is pronunciation a hill I want to die on? No, it's not. Like, you know what I mean? As my mum would say, call me whatever you want, just don't call me late for dinner. So that taught me that, because there was all these videos coming out saying, don't listen to her. She doesn't know what she's talking about. There's always been something off about this lady. And then one of the worst ones was someone saying that don't let her make you feel less confident about your voice. And that really got to me, because that was in direct contravention of the whole reason I do this. I do it for the opposite. So what was I doing? Crying on the couch of my coach's office. Why don't they like me? They don't understand. They don't know anything about me. And that's when she gave me the best piece of advice I've ever been given. She said, Sal, you got to live life in your disco ball. Keep on shining, keep on dancing. You decide who comes to your party, and everyone else is a reflection right back on themselves. And remember, the finger of judgment, one finger out is 3 fingers back on yourself. So that experience was a really great way of helping me break through the I don't care what people think. Because during this time, when all of those negative comments were coming, you know what was happening to my business revenue? It was rising, right? So that was the edge at that time, which really helped me break through. And now I work with businesses really on that, on the breakthrough, the what will people think barrier. And I guess now, just reflecting on your questions and what we're talking about, what's happening now with the media of my book. So the book was a big part, putting it in black and white, putting it out there. And then now talking about it even more, it's a new edge, kind of the same flavour. You know, they often say, new level, same devil. They say different devil, but I think it's new level, same devil. It's kind of the same thing that keeps often coming up, just the different varying degrees of intensity.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's one of those things that a lot of business owners will face off with as well. It's that fear of being misunderstood. And I remember one of my coaches basically destroyed my entire view on it with one sentence. He said, he's like, you can have the fear of being misunderstood, but just remember, like, even Jesus' disciples didn't understand him. And, you know, when you stand the test of time and be willing to be misunderstood, then you actually truly stand for something. So you're standing for what you actually believe in. And sometimes it plays out that you're copping all of the hate and things like that for something that you wouldn't even want to necessarily talk about. It's just something you're saying off the cuff. I remember that's definitely played out for me in my journey as well, in times that I've gone viral. And you know, it comes back to what is your truth with that, and you sharing your truth exactly where you're at, because that becomes the most important thing. DeMartini says, I'd rather have the entire world against me than my own soul. And it's one of those things that kind of sticks with me over the years as well. What would you say as we start to kind of wrap up this as like a final thing for people to step into speaking their truth on an even deeper level?
Well, relating to what we were just speaking about is there will always be people who don't like us. That's what it is to be magnetic. If you want to be truly magnetic, you're going to attract the trash metal as well, as I say. You're going to attract the trash. And so if people aren't going to like us anyway, if they may not understand us anyway, then wouldn't we rather be stepping forward with our true, authentic voice? If people aren't going to like us anyway, don't we want to step forward with the voice that's truly ours? And I imagine everyone tuning into this podcast are people that have a message larger than themselves, something they want to leave behind, impact they want to have. And so I would say, don't forget your voice print, that invisible mark you leave every time you speak. And don't just think about being heard in the moment, but think about what impression are you leaving and how will you be remembered once you leave the room.
I love that. I think that's the perfect thing to wrap up on. What's the best way for people to find you?
Instagram @SallyProsserVoice, TikTok as well, LinkedIn, or sallyprosser.com.au. Don't forget the AU.
Awesome. Thank you. This has been fun.
Thank you.